We'll have some fun with this. Oh, that's good music there.
Yeah.
That's good music.
It's actually the song is called Red River Jig by Gary Lapine.
There you go.
Hi everybody, I'm Derrick Whiteskycloud, and you're listening, or actually seeing us live on Facebook. And we're Facebook Live here at the Michif Historic and Culture Preservation Society here at the Metis, which is a Metis Museum here in Clearwater, and it's part of the North Thompson Aboriginal Center located in this area. And if you guys actually want to be interested, come down and see us. We would love to see you. I have my great brother guest. This is Dale Haggerty. He is actually the curator of the Michif Historic and Culture Preservation Society, which he also is our president as well. Dale's been the president for 20 years, and it's been busy for this guy. He's been doing so much for the community, and so we want to acknowledge everybody that's here in the chat room. And I'm here in Clearwater with Dale right now, and this is part of the museum itself. This is something that this is one of the goals that all of our board members have been trying to create. And this is Dale's dream, one of his major dreams, that he wanted to see that this museum has a settlement of its own where you can share the artifacts and the history of the Métis, including the veterans. You want to tell they'd like to share their stories. And we also want to acknowledge the Simpcw Nation for allowing us to even tell the story, because this is on their territory.
Yes.
In the Clearwater region.
Yes.
I want to welcome you, Dale.
Thank you very much, Derek.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm really pleased that we have a good worker in Cindy Wilgosh to help us land this little cubicle that we're going to show off. And thank you that the First Nation communities has allowed us to put our display in their landed territories. And thank you for putting this video so we can show off what we're so proud of.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we've worked very hard. My goal and my dream is to have a home base for our museum, so we can take our kids, we can train our youth and take over and continue this, because we're not going away.
No.
We are not going away. This is our land just as much as everybody else's. Our ancestors created this. They made the trails. They brought the Europeans over. They brought the settlers through the rough times, and we're not going away. There you go.
No, I mean, I've been working with you and known you for many, many years, and working with Dale in the museum. I work as a cultural director at Michif Metis Museum. I'm also the host of Metis Matters Radio now for, actually we'll be coming up in a year in December.
Yes.
And it's been hugely successful, and I really want to thank everybody for being part of this. I had Dale come down to the studio, and I interviewed him there, but I've never had an opportunity to get a chance to get Dale to be interviewed here in Clearwater, where he's based out of. And it's because, number one, this man was actually a school teacher, and so he's traveled so many reservations, or he's traveled in areas where there's Métis community, and there's only so much you can do. It's hard for me to get a hold of him, get him tied down. If he's not tied down, then I gotta find a way to spend time together with this man. So I thought, you know what? We just finished doing this one full day workshop this morning. We were at the Dutch Lake Center, and Cindy Wilgosh and the staff and everybody in the community put on this wonderful gathering, and it was all to do with the healing circle. But the way it was made, I'm sure you've seen some of the videos that I actually put out. I placed on Facebook. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you need to have a look at it. It was put on itself. The workshop was done by Deborah Fisher, who has been doing this a lot of years, and she's been trying to help even the community, no matter if it's First Nations, Métis, or Inuit, including non-Native people. She's just basically saying, we care, and she cares, and she's just trying to get that word out. And what were your thoughts being part of that workshop?
No, this was a very, very successful. You know, Derek, my mom was in residential school, and they never called it residential school, they called it a convent. My mom's a survivor. I'm second generation survivor, and it really hit us hard because when we didn't know where we come from, it just hit us hard so bad. And so I really enjoyed being there and trying to explain to people that, you know, how our life was, you know, not knowing who we were, and Mom finally confessing to us to tell us that, you know, she was part of this system. And yeah, it was very enlightening. I enjoyed it very much.
Like, even though people say they have a residential school and they say that, okay, no, you didn't go to residential school, your mom went to boarding school, it's still the same, folks.
It is.
The word boarding school came from the U.S., and then Canada adopted it back in the late 1800s, and they changed the name, calling it a residential school. It was still the same thing.
Same thing.
It was basically, the school itself was developed to be more like an industrial school. They wanted to take the red out of us, or the color out of us, or take the history of our people away and try to immerse them into colonization or being colonized. And the thing is that for over 150 years, there was so much, I would say, torment, anxiety, hurtfulness, torture. I mean, there's so many bad things. I mean, there are a few people that did survive residential schools that weren't as bad with themselves, but I mean, everybody experienced it differently. And I felt that when Cindy Wilgosh asked me to come up to be the MC and to the opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, and to basically be a sort of a wonderful, I love being there, because to me, I was actually part of that once before. Someone else did a workshop similar to what this blanket ceremony was about, but it wasn't just a blanket, it was actually blankets. I mean, these blankets were basically, there's well over 80 people on these blankets, and it broke down by telling the story, and in it basically represented land areas of Canada where it broke down to almost to the point there was hardly anything left. And that's what I find that was interesting, because
Yes.
They broke it down to make it look like, you know, everyone kept, like people trying to convince us, saying, oh, well, you really didn't really have it hard. But you know what? The land masses, when they start to shrink because of what the federal government had done, people start noticing more.
Yes.
And even the non-native people experienced it themselves.
We had probably about 30 people that were there that were non-native people, and they were really surprised. They made comments of how they felt, and I'm telling you, a lot of them says that it opened their eyes about how Canada had this dark secret, and we're all part of it, you know. And the only thing that we can do is change. They want to ask us for forgiveness, but how can you forgive somebody when they're already gone? Like my mom, she's gone to the Creator now.
Yeah.
There's no forgiveness for her, but yet she forgave the government for what she did to her family. She never saw her brother. Took her away in 1937, and they never saw each other after that.
Yeah.
So.
But that's segregation. That's what they did. They were trying to control, you know, who we were, and even language. I mean, basically, you weren't allowed even to speak the Michif language, which is Cree French, mixed, or even any indigenous languages. They were trying to take that away from you. And if you actually ever spoke that language, they made it illegal. If you spoke that language, you went to jail. You went to prison. Or they beat it into you. Like, you don't know either which way, they tortured him. There's so many listings of things that it did happen. You'll see on that page, on the Facebook page where I've actually recorded, you'll see what Deborah, her presentation was all about. And I'm actually going to get Deborah come on my program on Wednesday. Hopefully we're going to have her be able to come down, or have her, not come down, but because she's far away, but have her on the show and interview her by phone. But when she shares her story and her workshops and what she's been doing, you'd be surprised. You know, there's so many things that we're trying to do with the reconciliation. And myself, I was part of the Truth and Reconciliation back in 2008. I was actually one of the Métis elders that was sent down with the Truth and Reconciliation people, and there was over 250 of us from all across Canada gathered at the River Cree Resort, and to basically to be part of this program, to see what we can share with Health Canada that we're doing the research. And at the time, there were so many things that I witnessed there that was not very nice. I mean, as far as, yes, our people, everyone actually was expressing their feelings, and it became very, very emotional. And even to this day, since 2008, and even since this is 2018, 10 years has gone by, and I don't still think that a lot of this has been healed yet. There's a lot to deal with it. I mean,
Yes.
Like Dale himself, he's saying that he's actually a recipient of it because his mom went through it and he went through it. And you gave me the letter to give to them in Health Canada. Did they ever send you a letter back?
Never.
None. So
Never.
it's been 10 years have gone by, and they had never bothered writing back to say, we thank you very much. We got your letter. We looked it over. Never a word.
Never.
So that tells you that, do they really care? Did they really care? They really wanted to give a care about it. And yet, even though when Harper was Prime Minister and he did the apology, and yet I was at the center, the Friendship Center in Vancouver when this all took place. There was a full center, but yet nobody believed the fact that he was supposed to represent Canada, but that Canada apologized. Even to this day, still people are angry, and they're still frustrated, and they're still trying to figure it out what they can do next, because there's so many right now Indigenous dollars
Yes.
taken away from so many programs.
Yes.
So it's really getting harder, including Cindy, who's been doing so many programs 6x6 with the center itself, and she's trying her darndest, including her staff, the people that she's working with and the board. They're trying their darndest to bring more funding in this area, to do more Indigenous programs. But yet, we still are having some racist issues of this town. But we're having it everywhere, not just Clearwater.
Not here, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So
they think that we're getting all the money, and we're not. We're not being eligible for funding. They're saying things in the media saying that, the First Nation people are getting all the money, and yet me being a school teacher, firsthand seeing what reserves are that are in fly-in communities, it's pretty sad.
What, if you want to share with our listeners or viewers, what locations were you teacher?
I was in Wasagamak, Manitoba, which is called Island Lakes, Manitoba. There's 3 communities. Actually, there's 4. It's Garden Hill, Teresa Point, Wasagamak, and there's, I think, I'm not too sure if it was Steel River or one of another island there that it's part of the group. They call it the Island Bands. And it's in a fly-in community. Teresa Point has got an airport. Garden Hill has got an airport. Wasagamak, where I lived, was teaching. I was an industrial arts teacher there, and they're living in hovels. They're getting food from fly-in places that they fly in ice roads and stuff like this. But bananas, for example, $7.50 a pound for bananas.
Wow.
Essential things like sugar was $29 a 5 kilo. Flour, which we could get a 10 kilo here for maybe at the most $9, was $39. Baking powder was $15 to $18. Lard, which they used a lot of lard.
For baking?
Baking.
Yeah.
Lard was like about $9 a pound. Butter was about $9 a pound. And then the government says that they subsidized. Well, where do these subsidized money coming from? Do you know the funny part about it is when they made these treaties, they signed them and says, the government said, we will take care of you. The pensioners get $550 a month, and they still have to pay for their fuel. It's $3.95 at the time a liter for fuel. They still have to pay their telephone.
$3.95 a liter.
A liter.
In Wasagamok. And you guys thought it was tough here.
Yes. And you think it's up north. And because it's in the fly-in community, it's out of sight. They don't care. They don't care. Out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew one of the teachers, he didn't even have a toilet in his house because they couldn't afford it. They were paying teachers $47,000, but any of the First Nation people working there, they were being paid $20,000 and $30,000 at the most.
Wow.
You know, so they had to get people from out, and they had to pay more. They spent millions of dollars to the wrong people, and they're not getting the right things done to them. And like I says, when you're a pensioner and you're only getting $550, they can't go hunting because it's an island. And so what do?
Yeah, what are you going to hunt? Fish, that's it.
They get fish, but the fish is not good because it's polluted. It's polluted.
Yeah.
And if they do go fishing, they have to go way out there. Ice fishing, they get it, and smaller fish, they can do that. But they have to fly to land bases to go hunting, which then it costs money. It costs thousands of dollars to fly out to these hunting grounds, and then they come back. And then when they get a moose or two mooses, they share it amongst everybody. They don't, you know, most of the families are all relatives, and they're going to get some sort of moose meat and rabbit and whatever they get, you know. This is Wasagamok. I seen it. I felt their pain, and there's nothing we can do because it's out of sight, out of mind, and our government don't care. You say, well, they'll build these homes and then they burn them for fuel. Well, there's no trees on these things to go out because they've already raped the land of all the logging up there, and then they send them to barren lands where there's no trees. So where do they get the fuel to?
So basically, survival of the fittest is what it really is.
That's really what it is.
So you went actually, so from Wasagamok you went where?
I went right from there to, I went to Montreal Lake, which is another land-based. They had it a little bit better, but still they were under very strict conditions.
And Montreal Lake is where?
It's just 125 kilometers north of Prince Albert.
In Saskatchewan.
In Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And again, that, what can I say? Their communities are still building. They got lots of kids, lots of suicides. Lots of suicides. You just don't know who. We were in Wasagamok, and we were building coffins.
In what age group do you feel they were doing for committing suicides?
12 to 18 years old.
Oh my God, it's kids.
Kids. I landed off the plane in Wasagamok, and I wasn't there 2 weeks, and they found a 9-year-old hanging.
No.
I almost took the first plane out. I just was so upset. I was crying because I have students that are their sisters and brothers, and they were in my classroom, and oh,
you know, hurts inside. The kids, when you were actually helping the kids, when they came to your class, what was their thoughts when you were teaching them? Because I remember you talking about making a toboggan for them.
Oh yeah, we were making all kinds of skis, sleds, toboggans. We were making things for their community, like a picnic table, for example. They never even knew what a picnic table was because they were worried that they were going to get it burnt, right, or whatever for fuel, right? But the toboggans there, I mean, we had sort of like a small little hill, and the kids would go out there and they would take their toboggans after they make them, and they would just spend so much time, and it was good. We had an ice rink there that they never even, had to repair it in order for them to flood it so they could play hockey on it. It was pretty sad.
Did you ever I think you mentioned something about that you made a dog sled? Was it a dog?
Oh yes, we made dog sleds. We made sleds for the back of their sleds, their skidoos and stuff like this, you know. And a matter of fact, they made a one that they can actually use it on the ice, where the truck can actually, instead of having a trailer, it was a sled that was huge enough. It was like 14 feet long, about 8 feet wide, and
Wow.
they could transport a lot of stuff. And a matter of fact, they took it down to Manitoba in the wintertime and loaded this thing up, and they hauled it back. Like, they put sides on it and everything,
Wow.
and it was unbelievable.
This is the carpenter.
Yeah, I'm
now,
not a carpenter.
No, I'm just saying, you helped him build it. The crazy part of it is that your history from the very beginning, I mean, before you became a school teacher, you were a glazier.
Yeah, I was an architectural metal mechanic, glazier, glass worker, which, hey, I did high rises. I was working outside of buildings 30, 40 stories.
And where were these
Vancouver.
places? Vancouver.
And Toronto.
Yeah.
I
So
was in
Dale
Toronto.
is quite well known in the works. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, he's been around putting glass in the high rises.
And malls and
Malls?
anything, automobiles. That was
How many years have you done that?
38 years.
38 years.
Yeah, 38. And then when I retired, I was quite young. I was 54 and had to do something, and somebody suggested me going to be an instructor, and of course I did. I did a trades program and taught the kids and adults that they want to go back to school, and then I started going into high schools and elementary schools and First Nation communities.
What made you decide? I mean, here you were introduced into the Métis Museum. What made you decide to get into it, and who were you introduced to get you into this?
Oh well, I met this gentleman in Surrey. His name was Patrick Reed. God bless you, Patrick. I was lost. Derrick, I was lost.
Yeah.
And you knew me before I got involved.
Yeah.
I was lost. I couldn't believe that they called me a Métis, which I didn't even know who was a Métis. And I went and talked to Patrick, and Patrick tested me to see how dedicated I was. And when I went there and helped them out and listened to elders' stories, and they were watching me because Patrick wanted to retire. And this is now almost 20 years, Derrick, that I've been with the Historical Society. It's been a political...
Do you regret it?
Not at all. Because you know what? Dale and I, my wife Dale, we've gone across the country. We've gone to historical sites. We've looked up my documents. We went to Manitoba. There's an institution, a French institution, to find our legacy, at least my legacy. I found out that in one of the pictures that my great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, he was a voyageur. He worked for the Hudson's Bay. All the documents I got, I have touched the original.
Did you put glass in the Hudson's Bay yourself?
No, don't laugh. I did. I actually did.
That's funny.
No kidding. I was in Kamloops, and we worked for the Hudson's Bay Company, putting in glass shelves and mirrors on the walls in Hudson's Bay.
So you did the same thing like your relative.
Oh yes. So I was an employee of the Hudson's Bay, unfortunately. Unbelievable.
And he's got the trade blankets to prove it.
And I got the trade blankets to prove it. Yes.
So you went further from once Patrick trained you, and I would say trained you as in historical training. How long did it take you to really decide to make up your mind? Say, okay, you know what, I'm going to stick my nose into this and carry on.
Well, I talked to my mom. My mom was at the time, and my mom was not telling us about her history of that stuff, and I kept pestering her about information, and my mother didn't know. My mom was, like I says, it was almost taken away from her. Her whole life was turned upside down. They almost took us away. Like, if my uncle didn't die, unfortunately, I miss him very much. My Uncle Joe, we had cousins that came from Saskatchewan that actually kicked the door in, and all of these skeletons came out.
Sounds like Louis Riel being in the closet too.
Oh,
I'll
yes.
tell you more about that one, folks.
Yes, there you go. Anyways, that's my dedication, and I haven't stopped. I actually was in Prince Rupert just before I finally took the final plunge of saying I had enough. I was teaching First Nation kids in Prince Rupert about what Métis people are and who they were.
So what was it like being in Prince Rupert compared to Montreal Lake?
Oh, quite different. Quite different. You're looking at a city compared to
The country.
A country.
Yeah.
A country living like.
Take the country boy into a city.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
it was much better. I mean, they had everything they needed. The shop wasn't as great as for a city school. I went to Charles Tupper High School in Vancouver. That was one of the greatest schools I've ever had. I hated school, but when you were in the shops, they had everything you needed. But when you were in Prince Rupert and they're getting all this money, they had machines there that didn't work. They had equipment that was over. They needed to update and stuff like this. And even when I showed the kids about this huge thick book, it was big like this. It was automotive mechanics, and I says, "Well, you guys, here's your job. Here's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn this book." They all ran out because they did not want to do the book work. So I just said, well, what we'll do is we're going to pick some chapters out of there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the shop and we're going to learn hands-on. Now
we got some questions. I acknowledge Diana Holden, and she says, which tribes are represented at this museum?
This museum, we have a display of just Métis stuff in here, but we do have our local Simp Nation in here, and we have the Inuit. We have small collection of Inuit stuff. Derrick, if you want, why don't we take a little...
We can do a little tour in a few minutes.
Okay.
And Dolores Sewell, as well as Dolores Medina, both actually said hello. So these ladies some of these people are actually watching us from the States.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just in Canada,
and
also eastern part of Canada. So we got a lot of viewers from all across.
Wow.
But I want to go a little bit more before we start doing our little walk. I remember, like, when Dale's talking about the being in having to go have a workshop. When I was in school, all the boys, I guess you say, if the boys aren't building some sort of a shelf, I always had to make it better. I always had to make it bigger. I mean, when the boys at school years ago, if they're going to make a gun rack, most guys would make maybe 2-hook gun rack for their rifles.
Yeah.
I didn't want a gun rack. I wanted a gun cabinet.
Yeah.
So I would build a 6-foot tall gun cabinet to fit 4 rifles.
Yeah.
Upright with a drawer system down below. And I built that. I built that in school, and my teacher kept on saying to me that I spent more money in wood than they did. Because the boys, I guess, for some reason, when I was young, there's young guys that were quite talented, but for some reason I love working with wood, but I had to make mine bigger. I just want to make it more where it's useful. And the funny part of it is, when I got the gun cabinet done, it was like 3 feet wide
Yeah.
by 2.5 feet deep and 6 feet tall, and I was fitting 4 rifles because
Yeah.
my mom and myself and my dad, we all had rifles, and 1 shotgun, 2 22s, and a 30-30, and the Winchester was mine, and a bottom drawer for bullets.
Bullets, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I took that home, and I was so proud. I got an A, not bad. So like an A minus. They were saying like I could have done a little bit better, but hey, you know what? I was happy with it.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't even know where that gun rack went after that. After I left home, but the fact is that I was so proud of that gun rack, or the gun cabinet. The thing is that we have so much history that we remember as a young person growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, there's part of you that I want to ask as well is like, you know, after you met Patrick, and you and I decided to like all of us on the board, we decided to travel with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like even though there was a time that museum actually was a stationed museum up in 107th King George, and then the Chinese people bought the building,
Yeah.
gave us the royal boot,
Yeah.
and then we had to make a decision what we're going to do.
Yes.
Are we going to move it to another building or travel with it?
Yeah.
And then later on down the road, you said, "Well, I'm moving to Vavenby to Clearwater."
Yes, it's just a career change.
So Dale and I we made a decision. I thought, you know what? How about if we just split it up? So we split half the museum, because I'm in Surrey. The other half is up here.
Yes.
So I get to travel with the museum to the schools and even to huge festivals. And I get to share that Métis
Yes.
museum, what we have.
Yes.
And then you got yours up here.
Yeah.
You know,
All over British Columbia.
but it's not Dale's, it's not mine.
Yes,
We are the museum. We represent the museum.
Exactly.
We're waiting for that day where we're going to have a young Métis youth that one day that they'll say, we want to take it over, we want to be responsible, we want to take care of the museum.
Yes, that's what we want.
We don't want you to take it away, but we want you to say, I'll carry it on.
Yes.
Because that one day Dale's going to say, this is who I have confidence in.
Yes.
You know, and maybe it could be your son. You never know. Maybe
That's
Christopher may do it.
Oh,
you never
yeah,
know.
you never know.
You know, because when a person's in their 20s or late 20s, they're sort of thinking things over. But when you get into your 30s, thinking, oh, you know what, this may not be a bad idea.
Yes.
When I decided to join Dale, because when Dale was doing this, and he looked at me and says, why don't you come and join me? Give me, you know, like you were just as involved in it as I was. And I said, well, you know what? Sure, okay. And I immersed myself in it because
That's
of
right.
my Métis background, but I kept telling everybody, I'm not Red River.
Yeah.
I'm from the East. And
I'm not Red River either. My great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, the Villeneuves are from Fort Edmonton.
Yeah.
But
they keep on-
1790s. No, wait a minute.
Yeah.
1790s. That's where they established their Métis.
Yeah.
2 French brothers, great-grandfathers, married Alberta girls, Métis women,
It's Alberta girls.
Alberta, and established Fort Edmonton.
I married an Alberta girl.
Yeah. And there they did. And my great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, went back to Montreal as a young lad, ended up in the Red River, married, Confederation, involved with Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont. They were all part of that, but that's not where it started. It started in Fort Edmonton. I'm sorry, I'm not Red River. If you go right back to it, my great-grandfather, Isidore Villeneuve, which was a voyageur working for Hudson's Bay, was born in Fort Edmonton. My
But
grandfather,
they still call that Red River. I don't know
that
why.
wasn't the homeland.
I know, but they call them. They're called anybody who's considered a voyageur is a Red River. Well, I know, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, I mean, I can get too political. I don't want to get political right now. This is
Yes.
more interesting. I want to get more. We're talking about history. This is the
Yeah.
important part. You have a lot of historical family,
Yes.
in some of the history books.
Yes.
There's photographs of your relatives.
Yes.
In these history books, even in the Gabriel Dumont Museum.
Yes.
So, and that's just what I find is interesting because, you know, like you say, oh, your ancestors are from Edmonton, but but yet you're in the Gabriel Dumont Museum. I mean, your
Yes.
relatives are there.
Yeah.
His relatives are part of Louis Riel's.
Well, they were there at the time when the provisional government in 1867.
Yeah, and they're
Yes.
part of that fight
Yes.
against the military
Yes. In
And
1885.
in 1885, where the military came in and they
I
stood
lost
up.
a great grandfather.
You lost a great grandfather, Joseph.
Joseph Vandal.
Yeah.
He's buried with the 15 soldiers, Métis soldiers that were there.
And you were down at Patoche,
Yes.
and you found his grave.
Yes.
How did it make you feel when you were there to see that grave?
Oh, I could hear them talking to me.
Yeah.
I just, they were there. My heart was racing. It was like, keep it up. This is what we fought for. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt. It felt really good. It really did. I was driving Highway Louis Riel Highway, which is Highway 11, and my heart started racing. And my wife says, "The ancestors are talking to you." And I says, "How did you know?" And I says, "I could feel them too." And it was. You were just getting chills as you're going
Yeah.
on the highway. It was just the highway. It was unbelievable. Yeah.
If you folks have any questions you want to ask while we're still live, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
If you want to ask Dale any questions, please ask. We don't mind. I'll even let Dale know this. I guess what we're going to do, first of all, if you can get that booklet, and we're going to show them where your two relatives are in that booklet. Do you have that booklet here?
I don't know if I have it here.
Okay, we'll have a look in a few minutes, but we're going to take this camera now. We're going to actually we're going to walk around the museum, and Dale's going to introduce to us some of the artifacts that he's been responsible for the last 20 plus years, and some of these artifacts are well over 100 years old, and even more. And
some of them are replicas.
And some are replicas, like representation thereof.
Because of the insurance
policies.
Yeah.
But you'll also, you'll actually see something is very important to us is coming soon. Like, November the 11th is also Remembrance Day, honoring
Yes.
our veterans. And Dale has set up a wall to honor our veterans. And this past year, a few months back, we lost a very good friend of ours who's also a Métis man, a great Métis fellow friend, was Motion Bob Kelly.
Bob Kelly.
And some people call him Robert Kelly or Motion Bob. And we had, and we'll show you a picture of him.
Yes.
But there are some really great people. Then we got some more people that are up on that wall that have passed away. But these, like in that talk, like even our veterans, when a veteran left to fight for our country, and when they came back, they had no status whatsoever. They had no recognition by the government. And even Bob Kelly was even fighting so hard. He used to go to Ottawa so many times to finally even have his name on the wall with the rest of the veterans.
That's right.
But it had to be a veterans wall, like an indigenous wall for veterans.
That's right.
They fought for years and
To get
years
this,
to finally get that monument set up, and it finally was done. But Dale or Bob passed. I think he was either 80 or 82. But he tried so hard to even stay here. He was adamant. He was trying to live longer, but his health just took him. And I know very well Bob's
80
or 82 years old.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah.
But he was stubborn. I mean, this man was stubborn. And Bob,
he was actually a chauffeur.
For some movie stars.
For Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
He was a chauffeur for Pierre Elliott.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, he was. He was in the military. He was through the UN, and he told me that he used to take Pierre Elliott Trudeau around. That was his job. He was his personal driver.
And we got to deal with Justin.
Yes. And then we got to deal with.
Do you want to drive Justin around?
Yeah.
Or just drive him crazy?
Yeah, just drive him crazy. That's right. There you go.
So we're going to go around. We're actually, I'll be reaching over folks, and we're going to actually have a little walk through the museum. So just let us. I'm going to just be a little bit patient for a moment here. Click you guys off. Not turning off. Just pop that off. And we're going to turn this around. And this is the museum. So Dale, if you want
to scan, or do you want me just to?
No, you can introduce. We're going to go start from this left side. This is the Veterans Wall.
This is the Veterans Wall, and of course, here are some of the veterans that are part of it. There's Bob Kelly. He was in the UN.
Yeah.
And
he was a peacekeeper.
Yeah, he was a peacekeeper. Here he was with the Governor General in Ottawa. This lady here, she was our elder.
Teresa
she
Dion.
was the one that actually married me and my wife, and another veteran that he was there. This is actually Teresa Dion's younger brother that was in the Second World War. Then we had some First Nation brothers here that were all here. Some of the names are Dan Pelche, Jimmy Coates, Albert Coates, George Moran, Stanley Dosher, and then there was another unknown soldier that they didn't get.
Last name was Robertson.
Yeah, Robertson. And here's George Dion, which was Teresa Dion's, I think Teresa Dion's brother and his buddies were in the Second World War.
Second World War, yeah.
And if you go up to the top shelf here, this is, his name was Wallace Ouellette. Ouellette.
Yeah, Willis
and
Ouellette.
his grandfather was also buried in Batoche. He was one of the ones that was laying around. He was injured, and the soldiers stabbed him while he was laying down on the ground. And and then of course we have our leader of Gabriel Dumont, and some of the patches that were donated and stuff like that.
Veteran patches.
Patches. And here's a family. This is Jim Brady. Jim Brady was an activist in Alberta. And Jim Brady is right there. And you got another picture here. He was in the Second World War, and they were in Holland, and their whole outfit, except for 2 soldiers, were wiped out by the German 88s. And then eventually he went back and joined another unit and took care of that German 88 group out. So he got sort of like even. Right up here, if we see that, the book.
This is your family right here.
This is the family. Right here in the corner here was my great-grandfather. He was a Champlain. And then there's about 3 or 4 Vandals in here. Now, what they did was they did a little bit of cheating and tried to avoid being arrested. So they added an extra E instead of saying they were Vandals, but actually they were Vandals. And what they did was they wrote an E on the end to try to get away from being arrested. Oh. And that was the military Métis in 1885.
So this is the militia of the Métis Liberation Movement.
Yeah. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. This is how the military took the idea of the teepee for the actual military. So they would get individual teepees, but they were tents, but the same thing. They took the same idea because it recirculated the heat in there, and it was good.
And you also got one of your own teepees, Dale. Now,
oh yes, I do.
Let's talk about this one here. I mean, this is actually something that was quite historical, right here.
This is where it's not on display, but this is the priest from the Anglican Church, and there's Gil Putras, and this gentleman here was a First Nation friend that was part of it.
Many Irons.
Yes.
Raoul Many Irons.
And he was...
sorry, not Many Irons. Sorry. Raoul Old Hands. Sorry,
Old Hands. Yeah, that's Old Hands. And what happened is they gave us back some very, very old items from the Métis community. And they are...
From the English diocese.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's one of our major heroes.
Yes,
this is Louis Riel. This is Louis Riel. This is the fellow that actually is one we call the true father of Confederation.
Yeah, there you go. And if you look down here, this is what they did. They actually took ammunition boxes. They raided General Dumont's things, and of course, what they did was these were General Middleton's.
General Middleton's.
General Middleton's ammunition. And of course, what they did was they just painted it out and put General Dumont on there, which is really nice.
Dumont.
Yeah, really. And of course, this is our display, and we honor. Here's a new member. He's from actually
Joe Short.
Joe Short. He's a veteran of our
Metis
from
community.
here, and he's from the North Thompson.
He actually served in Germany
Yes.
with NATO.
That's right.
And two tours in Egypt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cyprus. This man he traveled.
Yes, there he has.
And boy, he got stories to tell.
Oh,
Holy.
yes. And they're good stories.
Yeah.
And here's another one that was a survivor of the First World War.
Noel
His
Portress.
name, Noel Portress, and he's from the. I think we just.
He just
lost
passed
him.
away a couple years ago.
Yeah, we just lost him too. If you take a look at him, he sure looks like Bob Hope. I'm telling you, for
In
goodness
some
sakes,
way, yeah, he
really
does. Certain,
does.
yeah, a little bit of a side
Yeah,
view.
yeah. He should have passed.
Maybe it's Bob Hope's cousin.
Yeah, there you go. And as we move around, how we do is we respected the children of the Catholic faith. They all wear their.
This is what they wore.
Yes, that was their things. And of course, we move into our women's section. And they say the way you could tell a Métis woman was by her moccasins. They all wore moccasins. Mm-hmm. And if you can take a look at the bottom there.
Oh, he's lifting her skirt.
Be careful. I'm going to be there. They say because we had access to the forts. The Métis people had a lot of access to the forts. So women dressed up in European clothing.
Uh-huh.
So there you go. And of course, here's some of their work. I mean, unfortunately, these are pictures. Most of these are actually in museums.
And these are part of the Gabriel Dumont,
in Manitoba, the Saskatchewan archives, and all these things that are taken in pictures are real. And what they are is they're just typical European. Here's, for example, look at Métis girls, and you can see the moccasins on the bottom, but they're wearing European clothing.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see the moss bag. We took the moss bag, but the only reason why the moss bag looks like that is because that's how they identified us. We were store owners. We were entrepreneurs. All the things that we did. We didn't need to be educated because we were educated already. Mm-hmm. You see?
Saddle blankets for horses.
Yes. Look at this. I mean, you know, they were saying that in Sitting Bull's diary, they said that they were out going looking for buffalo, and of course, one of the couple scouts found this Métis encampment, and of course, they had the red flag flying, and to identify that they were Métis, and you know, not to be, they weren't harmful, but they were good enough that they would take on anybody. So, and Louis Riel's a group of people there, and Sitting Bull says that they came back and says that there's this encampment, and should we go and attack them? And he says, they were wearing all kinds of flowers on their saddles and and their clothing, and he says, no, we're just going to avoid those people because they were called those damn flower people.
Well, and the reason why, because the flower people were not like you thought the hippies were called the flower people. We were flower people long before the hippies.
Oh, yes, that's right.
But it was all to do with identity from a distance.
That's right, yes.
Identification, because, you know, a lot of times we never introduce ourselves from a distance. We just, if you wherever, what area you're living, if it's a red rose and you got another blue flower somewhere else, if you see a fireweed or if you see a thistle, then they pretty well got an idea where you're from.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And not only this, is the women were so proud of their men, they would dress them up. Like if you look at a male paycock and how his beautiful feathers when he thinks, well, that's exactly how the Métis women would. They were so proud of their men that they would dress them up to the T's. I mean, unbelievable.
Well, they took great pride of how they appeared.
They took great pride, and the workmanship that was
right down here, there's the hide coats.
Yeah, look at.
I mean, look how dressed up that was. I mean, it's very flower. The design, both from the leggings straight up to the jacket and the vest.
Oh,
I mean, it's something that you would You don't see that anymore.
Nowhere.
Same
And
right
look at
down
the
to the
gloves.
gauntlets.
Look at the gauntlets. They were unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they're all work, and that's all silk embroidered. That's not glass beads or anything.
No,
like
I mean,
that.
everything was
That
all embroidery
silk.
first.
That's right. It was all silk embroidery. I mean, some of these, like this moccasin here, these are replicas, but they're probably made in about 1950, 54, and they were still doing that kind of work.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Yes.
Now, this is your display case, and you could see even different varieties of sashes.
Oh,
You
yes.
can tell the designs are a
yes.
little bit different. And there's the statement of apology. Statement of apology that Mr. Harper had done regarding Indian residential schools. But, yeah. Now, let's talk about the fiddle.
Oh,
It's all to
music.
do with history.
that's right. Everybody knows J.J. LaValle.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, I had an elder come in me that he said that he played fiddles. And he says, you know how you can tell the difference between a normal fiddle and just a regular fiddle? He says, a Métis fiddle, what they do is they would take it apart and they would go in there and they would scrape the wood to make a different sound.
Different pitch.
Different pitch, exactly. And then they would glue it back, and it's their own sound. And that's just what it was all about. And of course, I have some sticks here. It's basically, I have to secure it here, so because if the kids come in, I don't want them to be the things. Here's another design for a Métis sash. It's a little narrow.
Finger weaved.
And it's finger
And you're
weaved.
a finger weaver.
Yes, I am. I learned, we used to teach classes in our museum in Surrey. Here is a typical Métis cap that was finger woven, and it came from Quebec. This lady here, she is Jeannie Mass, and she's an artist, and she was from Quebec. And I got this, and this is just almost like
Yeah, it looks like you.
like me. And then if you look over here, Derek, this is that, but only this is just that.
Wow,
And it's just the hat that they wore to identify themselves as who they were. So this was, some of the stuff is in here that it's part of my collection, but still it's part of the Métis community of what they did and how they did it. And I'm getting this thing that I can't even hang it back up. There you go.
Now we've got some history here. You can have a look, folks. You can actually pause it later on, but there's some of Dale's bio. And typical, this is our flag, but we have been so sorely corrected constantly from the blue to the red and from the red to the blue.
Yes. Now the red is the original flag. The blue is my story I tell the kids is they lost the red flag. So what they created, because these flags were handmade, these were not manufactured by the things, and they went back and asked the same elder, and she said that she didn't have any more red cloth, so they made one out of blue, and eventually it was adopted by the Métis National Council in 1982 that was going to be the flag that they were going to fly.
As you can see, folks, there's a picture right down there. That's my art.
There's your art.
I did a complete mural years back,
Yes.
back in 2005.
Yeah.
And that mural now is torn down and just drywalled.
Yes,
Someone
that's
took-
right.
someone took
It was
away.
a shame that what they did.
Yeah.
Here's some of the things that we did. We were in the May Day parade in 17, and there's another one that we won first place. It was that we were winning so many times that they wouldn't give us the first place anymore. They just said you can just have the second place. So we were swapping it back and forth. So it was
You're
funny.
just giving it a fair chance.
We were giving them a fair chance. Here's a typical Métis. This is an original print that was made of that's how they would go to the dance, and that's how they would. And there's a Métis woman there. And that's there as a trapper. And one of theirs are announced a beautiful.
There we go.
Okay.
There's nothing there in the way.
Yeah. But there's Bev, and she's one of our renowned dancers. We have another one that she's a really nice.
So we're almost coming to a close, folks. So here's what we got.
This is what I want to tell you. I always say to the kids, and I says, there's my great-grandfather. He was a middleman. I've actually got a document that actually says that my great-grandfather was a voyageur, and he was a middleman.
In the middle, he's the middle of the man.
And the meaning in he was the man that was in the middle of the major canoe.
Now these are leggings.
These are some of the leggings that which was purchased actually, and they were from back east. They were brought up, and of course, you know, we're always striding for room.
Yeah.
For there you go, but
there's some cool books. There's a trial of Louis Riel. That one there is by George and Terry Goulet.
They were another person.
Another great group of folks.
Yes.
Nice, they had great elders to talk to.
But there's a typical shirt, an everyday shirt of a Métis coat, hide.
Well, I got one similar to that, the little boy, the child's
that's
one that
right,
I
yeah.
actually display a lot.
Yes.
And you can, now the Métis were fur trap items that
Yes.
that
They depended on the fur trading because this is how they did it. They hunted and look how they even treated their dogs with really
great respect.
real respect. Look at that, a dog, actual dog sled, you know, where they're doing, and they treated their animals really respectful.
Yeah, they loved them very much.
That's right. And then there's over here is some padded saddles, and look at their saddles. I mean, I'd love to have accomplished the saddles. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
there you go. And here in the corner, what we've tried to display is that they were the entrepreneurs.
The trade blankets.
The trade blankets. Now these are newer trade blankets. The ones that we have are not on display because of the age, but we do have, I think in my collection that I've collected, I think I've got over 50 blankets. You know, and Derrick knows that because he just goes, wow, I'd love to have your blankets. That's right, so. And now that we're going through here, this is the inside of our typical museum. And if you want to take a look at, we're just going to scan. When we talk about, here's our national flag. There's the national flag. Very respectful. This is #1 flag. But like I said, the National Council has adopted that, but we still have that respect for that. And of course, we celebrate Canada's 150th. Look at, there's an actual 1862, and this come out of an actual history book. So there's no doubt that to the Red River and beyond. So, and in here where we cover is a lot of First Nations. Now, we are here on a donation basis. So what we get, we put up on the walls and whatever. Sim has given us some stuff. We've had some stuff out of our own, and they're all donated and they're on display. You know, we always look for more donations. There's our guard. He was a typical Métis guard.
These are the capotes,
paintings.
Dale.
Yes. And excuse
these-
the painting on his face.
But
I'm
these
not a
capotes
good-
are actually made out of trade blankets.
That's right. You know what? They never wasted anything.
Yeah.
They made, out of the bones, they made tools. Out of the blankets, they made coats. They made pouches. They made things for that. They were not a very wasteful. We were never wasteful. We were always resourceful. That's what it's all about. And there's a couple of things like this. This is one of the new parts of our Métis collection here. Sorry, Derrick.
No problem.
This lady here, she's a Métis artist, and we won these at a thing, and we're going to get her bio. But this is the kind of work that Métis people... Needlepoint.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. They're just absolutely gorgeous. And this
You don't
is
see it
how
often anymore,
you don't see that
needlepoint,
anymore.
no.
So it was very rare, and we asked her if we can put them on display. I mean, they're ours, but we still have that respect that we.
So Dale, you're going to actually find the website, MichifMétisMuseum.org, if they want to get a hold of you.
Yes.
It's 250 676
0096.
There we go. Folks, it's been wonderful to have you guys watching us on the Metis Matters video.
Yes.
But we're actually with the Michif Historic and Cultural Preservation Society and Dale Haggerty. Thank you so much for
thing down there and
putting it down. There you go, folks.
There and listening to the music.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, take care. Thank you.
Blessings to you guys. Take care.